So I'm sitting there at the desk doing my charting, and it was very quiet. The patients were basically sleeping. There was no docs, and the family members were gone. And then I heard this funny noise. And I look up, and there's one of my cardiac patients standing at his bedside. And then, whoosh, he disappears from sight. Not a good feeling, is it? No. And I jumped up from my desk, run across the hallway, throw open the door, and when my foot hit the entryway, over the next 30 seconds, seemed to be about an hour, I saw the large pool of greenish-brown fluid covering his floor. As I skidded across the fluid, I'm a new grad. I continue to think positive thoughts. I'm thinking I'm going to glide across this fluid. I'm going to land on both feet, and I'm going to save the day. This did not happen. Instead, I skidded across the fluid, and boom, I landed on the floor so hard my head bounced off the linoleum. But being a great nurse, I immediately rolled over to assess my patient, who's trying to get up. And then boom, he falls again. So with no concern for my own safety, I try to get up to help him, and boom, I fell again. He tried one more time. I tried again. How many of you in here are old enough to remember Bambi on ice, right? We are all over the place when finally our eyes lock. And I see that the man is starting to laugh. And then he gives me this little wink and says to me, "It's not what you think." I said, "Enlighten me." He said, "Oh, hon, I was hoping to hide my tobacco juice before you made rounds." Now, to this day, I cannot tell you if this was the good news or the bad news. But I can tell you that once I knew he was safe, I had him cleaned up, in his bed, taken care of, I began to see the humor in the situation. As I looked at my clean, white, starched uniform, now covered with greenish-brown fluid, I began to laugh at myself, which I realized was so crucial because the minute I walked out into the hallway, my colleagues immediately saw the humor in the situation. I think it's always better if you can laugh at yourself first. Here's a little exercise I'm going to give you. Costs you nothing, and you can do this just any point in time during this conference, but particularly when you get back and you're feeling like if one more person puts one more thing on your desk, you're going to have to kill them. Simply try this. Take a deep breath and put a real toothy smile on your face like this. All right? I need to see teeth. I don't care if they're yours. Come on, do this with me. Okay, now turn and make eye contact with the victim who's sitting next to you. Okay, because I want you to see how this feels. Because now you have a tool. The next time that you're seated at your desk, or you can do this standing, facing the entryway, hallway, doorway, whatever, and you're doing this. The next person that walks in and sees you looking like that is going to know now is not the time to bother you. Let me give you an example of some gallows humor that I observed that was actually turned out to be a very positive experience. I was teaching students, and they were working on a unit, and one of the students, she was taking care of a patient who was very near death. And the patient wasn't responding to verbal stimuli. But the one thing that she did all during the day shift, all during the night shift, all during the evening shift, 24/7, she called out the name of her long deceased sister, Irene. Anybody who walked in heard, "Irene? Irene? Are you there? Irene?" Came to be change of shift. Nurses were getting a little tense. You know, you could tell the anxiety. And now many of you have worked in situations like this and you realize it's just background noise. You don't even pay attention to it. But that sometimes it has a cumulative effect. And you could tell because people were making comments like, "Can you not shut her up? You put a sock in her mouth. Can't you give her more drugs?" Little subtle clues that they were getting annoyed. And so it comes to be change of shift. In comes the head nurse. She opens the double doors, and the very first thing she hears is, "Irene?" She shut the doors. She walked over to the next unit, walked into an empty patient's room, picked up the phone, and dialed the nurse's station. The nurse on the other end picked it up and said, "Hello, this is Mary, ICU. How can I help you?" She said, "This is Irene. Has my sister been asking for me?" I'm going to tell you, once the shock wore off, we got men and women on the floor. We got Cheetos flying out of their mouths, soda out their nose. They are just, every bit of anger and anxiety is just coming out all over the place. And I will be the first to admit, had a family member seen that, they would not have been amused. But I'm here to tell you that over the next 48 hours, this woman got better care than she had in the previous 2 weeks. Because now anytime somebody walked in to lift her, wipe her, turn her, feed her, or medicate her, if she said, "Irene," their response was, "Yes, she called." It's so wonderful to be in this profession, and we use all sorts of humor anyway. But one of the things that I have realized as I get into my research is that this is very much like novice to expert. That many of you will, at first, when you're kind of new on board, you might use the humor for yourself, to relieve your own stress and anxiety. And later, then you begin using it to relieve other people's anxiety. And when I'm talking about using humor, I am making an assumption here. I'm talking about the kind of humor that is inclusive, the kind of humor that makes people feel good. It's the kind of humor that's laughing with versus laughing at. But when I did my research, at first I thought this was totally black and white. There's the good humor, and there's the bad humor. And then the more I looked into it, I realized what a huge gray area is in between. So how do you describe this area? I think that this humor can be very good for you as long as you understand what some of the parameters are for this humor. For example, one of the benefits of humor is the social bonding effect. You want people to feel bonded. They play together. You share humor. You do the 70s party, and you do the MASH bash, and you do all of these kinds of wonderful events. And in your own communities, you participate in various kinds of humor. Humor makes you part of that group, but there can be the "you had to be there" humor. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you've all had one of these on your floor. This is the type B personality, and this person has no stress in her life because she has absolutely no structure in her life. She's the one, you're trying to explain to her the gravity of the situation. You're saying, "Okay, come on, girl, stay with me now. Okay, we got 3 of the staff out sick. We got patients lined up in the hallway. Jaco is coming next week to survey us. And we got a virus in the computer. And the sky is falling. And this person will stare at you like a dog." Until finally she turns around muttering to herself, "Well, like in 100 years from now, is this really going to make any difference?" And the type B has the potential to live a long, long lifespan, unless in that particular moment she's standing next to a type A who's going to grab her around the neck and begin shaking her violently, screaming, "What you get with the program?"